I always assumed my family was complicated but normal, right up until the toast at my 33rd birthday party. That was the moment my mother, Denise, raised her glass and announced to the entire room that she had adopted me for the tax benefits. She delivered it like a punchline, but when the laughter died and the silence suffocated us, I realized the terrifying truth. She wasn't joking, she was confessing, and my life would never be the same. The humidity in Westbridge, Pennsylvania, always felt like a physical weight in mid-July, a heavy, damp blanket that settled over the manicured lawns and slate patios of my aunt's neighborhood. For my 33rd birthday, Aunt Linda had insisted on hosting. She was the family archivist, the one who curated the image of the Bailey clan with military precision. Her backyard was transformed into a Pinterest board come to life, complete with string lights draped between the maples, mason jars filled with wildflowers, and a catered spread that looked too geometric to be eaten. I stood near the hydrangeas, holding a glass of Pinot Grigio that was sweating in the heat, and tried to feel 33. It was supposed to be a solid age, the Jesus year, a year of mastery and settling down. I looked across the patio at Sam, my fiancé. He was laughing at something my cousin Mike was saying, his hand resting casually on the back of a teak chair. We were getting married in 6 months. I had a job I actually liked in marketing for a mid-sized tech firm. I had a mortgage. I had checked all the boxes that usually signaled adulthood in a town like this. Everything was perfect. It was aggressively perfect. And that was usually when my stomach started to turn. My mother, Denise, was vibrating. That was the only word for it. She was wearing a silk dress that was perhaps a shade too bright for a casual garden party, a vivid fuchsia that demanded the eye. She flitted between clusters of guests like a hummingbird that had consumed too much nectar. Her laughter striking the air a little too high, a little too sharp. I watched her intercept a conversation between my boss, who had graciously stopped by, and my Uncle Jerry. Denise placed a hand on my boss's shoulder, steering him away from whatever topic they were discussing. I saw her mouth moving rapidly, her head tilting in that performative way she had when she was trying to charm someone. "Hey, Lil." I turned to see Becca, my best friend since the 4th grade. She was holding a plate of bruschetta but not eating it. She was watching my mother too. "Your mom is on one today," Becca said, keeping her voice low. I took a sip of wine. "She is just excited," I said, though the excuse tasted thin. "She loves a party, especially one where she does not have to clean up." Becca narrowed her eyes. "She keeps changing the playlist. I swear she has skipped 3 songs in a row because they were too slow. And she cut me off when I was telling your cousin about that time we got lost in Philly. It was weird. She said nobody wants to hear ancient history." I felt a prickle of unease at the base of my neck. Denise had always been the editor of our lives. She liked stories that made us look good, successful, and uncomplicated. Getting lost in Philadelphia did not fit the brand. I walked over to where Denise was fussing with the arrangement of cupcakes on the dessert table. They were arranged in a tiered tower, an ombre cascade of pink to white. "Mom, relax," I said, touching her elbow. "Everything looks great." Aunt Linda outdid herself. Denise jumped as if I had touched her with a live wire. She spun around, her eyes wide and glassy. "Lillian, there you are. I was looking for you. We need to do the toast before the sun goes down completely. The lighting is perfect right now." She gestured to the sky, where the sun was dipping below the tree line, casting a golden haze over the yard. It was the golden hour, the holy grail for her Instagram feed. "We can wait a bit," I said. "People are still eating." No, now is the time," she insisted, grabbing a spoon and tapping it against her champagne flute. The sharp ting-ting-ting cut through the hum of conversation. She tapped harder. "Attention! Everyone! If I could have your attention for just a moment." The chatter died down. 30 faces turned toward us. I smiled the practiced smile of a daughter who knew her role. "Stand still. Look grateful. Let Denise shine." Sam walked over and stood next to me, sliding his arm around my waist. His warmth was grounding. Denise stepped into the center of the patio, holding her glass aloft. the string lights reflected in her eyes, making them glitter. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my beautiful Lillian," Denise began. Her voice wavered slightly, then firmed up. 33 years. Can you believe it? It feels like just yesterday I was bringing her home. She paused for effect. The guests smiled politely. Aunt Linda beamed from the doorway, holding a tray of napkins. "You know," Denise continued, her gaze sweeping the room but not quite landing on me. "Raising a child is never easy. We all know that. The sleepless nights, the tuition bills, the braces. God, the braces!" A ripple of dutiful laughter moved through the crowd. "But Lillian made it easy," Denise said. "She really did. And you know, people always tell me how generous I was, how selfless it was to take her in." I stiffened. Take her in? That was a strange turn of phrase. I was adopted. Yes, but my parents had always framed it as us becoming a family. Not a charity case. I had been an infant. It was a closed adoption. I had never known anything else. Denise took a large swallow of champagne. "But I have to be honest with you all. I believe in honesty. We are all family here, right?" She giggled. A nervous, bubbling sound. I did not do it just out of the goodness of my heart. I mean, look at her. She is great. But let's be real. We did it for the tax benefits. The silence that followed was instant and absolute. It was not the quiet of a pause. It was the vacuum of a room where all the oxygen had been suddenly sucked out. I felt my smile freeze on my face, a rictus of muscle memory that had nowhere to go. Denise laughed again, louder this time, into the dead air. "Oh, come on. It is true. The write-off that year was fantastic. It really helped us with the down payment on the split level. So really, Lillian, you paid for your own nursery." She raised her glass toward me, expecting a toast. Nobody moved. "From the corner near the grill," my cousin Mike blurted out, loud and flat. "Wait, what?" I felt the blood drain from my extremities and rush entirely to my face. My skin felt like it was catching fire. I looked at Sam. He was not looking at me. He was staring at my mother, his brow furrowed, his mouth slightly open, as if he were trying to translate a foreign language. Denise looked around, her smile faltering just a fraction. "Oh, stop it. You guys, it is a joke. Sort of. But hey, it worked out for everyone. That is the point. A win-win." She took another drink, draining her glass. I could not breathe. The backyard, with its perfect lights and perfect flowers, suddenly felt like a stage set that was collapsing around me. The tax benefits. She had said it twice. Becca was suddenly at my side. She did not make a scene. She did not yell. She simply stepped between me and the rest of the party, blocking the direct line of sight from the guests who were now exchanging horrified whispers. "Okay," Becca said, her voice bright and hard. "Cake time! Who wants cake? Linda, can we get some knives over here?" The spell broke. The guests scrambled to look busy, to look anywhere but at me. Aunt Linda rushed forward, her face a mask of frantic cheer, and started cutting the cake as if her life depended on it. I pulled away from Sam's arm. I needed to move. I needed to get away from the staring eyes. "Lil?" Sam whispered, reaching for me. I walked away. I walked straight past the dessert table, past the whispering neighbors, and into the house. I heard footsteps behind me, the click of heels on the hardwood. "Lillian!" Denise called out. "Lillian, do not be rude." I turned around in the kitchen. It was empty, save for the caterers who were outside clearing plates. The stainless steel appliances gleamed under the recessed lighting. "Rude?" I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. "You just told my entire birthday party that you bought me for a tax break." Denise scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. She walked to the island and poured herself more wine from an open bottle. "You are being dramatic," she said. "You are always so sensitive. I was making a joke. I was breaking the ice. Everyone was standing around so stiffly. It did not sound like a joke." I said, I felt a cold clarity settling over me, pushing back the humiliation. You said it helped with the down payment on the house. Is that true? Denise rolled her eyes. She leaned against the granite counter, crossing her ankles. Oh, honestly, Lillian, who cares? It was 33 years ago. Details get fuzzy. So what if there was a financial incentive? That is how the government encourages adoption. It is a good thing. It meant we could afford to give you a better life. I stared at her. I had spent my life hearing the story of how much they wanted a baby, how they had tried for years, how when they finally got the call, it was the happiest day of their lives. Now, in the span of 3 minutes, the narrative had shifted from miracle to transaction. I want the name of the agency. I said. Denise blinked. What? The adoption agency? I said, you have never told me the name. You always said it was a private lawyer in the city who retired. But if you were filing for tax credits, there had to be paperwork. There had to be an agency or a caseworker. What was the name? She stiffened, her posture shifting from casual to defensive. She set the wine glass down a little too hard. I do not remember, she said. It was ages ago. You remembered the down payment, I countered. You remembered the tax write-off. Stop grilling me, she snapped. Her voice rose, echoing off the tile backsplash. I give you a beautiful party. I invite all your friends. And this is how you thank me? By interrogating me in the kitchen? She smoothed the front of her silk dress, her hands trembling slightly. It was a closed deal. Lillian, a private arrangement. It was complicated. We did what we had to do to make sure you were safe and with us. You should be thanking me, not acting like I committed a crime. She pushed past me, smelling of expensive perfume and white wine. I'm going back to the guests. She threw over her shoulder. Try to fix your face before you come out. You look miserable. I stood alone in the kitchen for a long time. I listened to the muffled sounds of the party through the sliding glass door. The laughter had returned, but it sounded brittle now. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. I did not go back out to the party. I went out the front door and sat in Sam's car. When Sam finally came out 20 minutes later, he didn't say anything at first. He got into the driver's seat and closed the door, sealing us in the quiet of the sedan. He started the engine, the air conditioning blasting against the humid night. We drove out of the subdivision in silence. We passed the perfectly manicured lawns, the mailboxes that all matched, the illusion of order. Finally, Sam cleared his throat. That was intense, he said. I stared out the window at the passing streetlights. She was drunk. I said, she did not mean it. Sam tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. He was a logical man, an accountant. He dealt in numbers, in balances, in things that made sense. It was a very specific thing to say. Lil, he said gently, the tax benefit part. That is not usually the punchline of an adoption joke. I know, I whispered. He glanced at me, then back at the road. Is there anything else? He asked. I turned to look at him. What do you mean? I mean, is there anything else about the adoption I should know? He kept his eyes on the road, but his grip on the wheel was tight. It is just, if there are legal things or financial things, we are getting married. Our finances are going to be merged. If there is some weird tax fraud in your family history. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I felt a crack form in the foundation of us. It was small, a hairline fracture, but it was there. Sam was looking at me differently. Before tonight, I was Lillian, his fiancée, the woman he knew inside and out. Now, I was Lillian, the woman whose mother publicly admitted to an adoption scheme. I was suddenly a variable he hadn't accounted for. I do not know. Sam, I said, my voice trembling, I honestly do not know. He nodded, but the silence that filled the car for the rest of the drive was heavy with unasked questions. When we got back to our apartment, Sam kissed me on the forehead and went to bed. He said he was tired, but I knew he just wanted to stop thinking about it. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch in the living room, the darkness pressing in on me. The digital clock on the cable box read 1:14 a.m. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't Denise. I picked up my phone and scrolled to my dad's number. Mark Bailey. They had been divorced for 12 years. He lived in Ohio now with his second wife. He was a quiet man, passive, the kind of guy who let Denise drive the car while he stared out the window. I pressed call. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice thick with sleep. Lillian, is everything okay? It is late. Dad, I said, I am sorry to wake you. What is wrong? Are you hurt? No. I said, I just had my birthday party. Mom was there. Mark sighed. The sound was static over the line. Ah, Denise, what did she do this time? She gave a toast. I said, she told everyone that I was adopted for the tax benefits. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear him shifting in bed. The rustle of sheets. She said what? He asked. She said you guys did it for the tax write-off. That it helped with the down payment on the house in Westbridge. Dad, I need you to tell me the truth. Was that real? Mark cleared his throat. He sounded wide awake now. Lillian, honey, you know your mother. She exaggerates. She likes to be provocative. That is not an answer. I said. I was gripping the phone so hard my fingers ached. Did you adopt me for a tax break? No, Mark said, almost shouting. No, absolutely not. We wanted a child. We wanted you. Then why would she say that? I asked. Why would she be so specific? She said it was a deal. Mark hesitated. The hesitation lasted 3 seconds, but it felt like an hour. Look, he said, his voice lower now. The financial side. Denise handled all the paperwork. You know I was working double shifts back then at the plant. She met with the lawyers. She handled the filing. I just signed where she told me to sign. But did you get a tax benefit? I pressed. I think there was a credit. Yes, Mark admitted. The adoption tax credit. It is a standard thing. Lillian, most people use it. It is not nefarious. But she said she did it for the benefits. I said, and she won't tell me the agency name. She says she forgot. Do you remember the agency? Mark was silent again. It wasn't an agency. Exactly, he said slowly. It was private. Through an intermediary, a friend of your mother's. I think his name was Henderson? Or Hendricks? You think? I asked. Dad, I am your daughter. How do you not know who gave me to you? It was a confusing time, Mark said weakly. She was very intense about it. She wanted it done fast. She said if we waited for an agency, we would age out. She found this path. She said it was legal. I trusted her. He sounded shaken. I realized then that my father, the man I had always viewed as the stable, if passive, parent, had actually been a passenger in his own life. He didn't know the truth either, or if he did, he had buried it so deep he couldn't access it anymore. Go to sleep. Lillian, he said, do not let her get in your head. She is Denise. We hung up. I sat in the dark. I closed my eyes and tried to summon the memories of my childhood. I wanted to find the warmth, the certainty of being loved, but instead, other things floated to the surface. I remembered being 7 years old, asking for a specific doll at the store, Denise sighing, checking the price tag, and saying, "You are an expensive investment. You know that?" She had laughed. So I had laughed. I thought it was a joke. I remembered the time I needed braces. Denise had sat at the kitchen table with the bill, red-faced, muttering about returns on investment and hidden costs. I remembered the baby book. Or rather, the lack of one. All my friends had thick albums filled with ultrasound photos, hospital bracelets, footprints. I had a few loose Polaroids in a shoebox that started when I was about 6 months old. When I had asked about it once, Denise had said, "We were too busy loving you to take pictures." It had sounded sweet at the time. Now, it sounded like a cover-up. I stood up and walked to the dining table where my laptop sat. I opened it. The screen glowed blue in the dark room, illuminating the remains of my birthday cake that I had brought home in a box. I was 33 years old. I was engaged. I was a professional. And I had no idea who I was or how I had come to be in this family. I opened a search engine. My fingers hovered over the keys. How to request adoption records, Pennsylvania. Adoption tax credit history, 1991. Private adoption fraud signs. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I wasn't doing this to blow up my life. I told myself that. I just wanted to know. I wanted to know if I was a daughter, or if I was, as my mother had so casually suggested, a deductible. Denise thought she could rewrite history because she was the one who held the pen. She thought she could turn my life into a cocktail party anecdote, but she had forgotten one thing. I was an adult now, and I could read the fine print for myself. I typed the first query and hit enter. The list of results populated the screen. Requesting your original birth certificate. Adoption search intermediary programs. I clicked the first link. It was time to audit the books. The following Monday morning, I stood in the lobby of the county records office, naively clutching my driver's license and a copy of my birth certificate. The building was a brutalist block of concrete that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. A place where enthusiasm went to die. I had taken a personal day from work, telling my boss I had a dental emergency, which felt like a lie I could manage. A root canal seemed preferable to excavating the foundations of my own existence. I pulled a number from the red dispenser, 42, and sat on a hard plastic chair. I had a plan. It was a simple plan. I would walk up to the counter, request my adoption file, pay a processing fee, and walk out with the answers Denise refused to give me. I had watched enough movies to believe that public records were, well, public, when number 42 flashed on the LED screen. I walked to the window. The clerk was a woman in her 60s with bifocals on a chain and an air of permanent exhaustion. "How can I help you?" she asked, not looking up from her keyboard. "I need to request a copy of my adoption file," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name is Lillian Bailey. I was adopted in 1991. The clerk stopped typing. She looked over her glasses at me, her expression shifting from indifference to a mild, bureaucratic pity. "Honey, you cannot just request an adoption file," she said. "Those records are sealed by the court." I blinked. "But I am the adoptee. I am 33 years old. Surely I have a right to see my own history. Pennsylvania is a closed record state for adoptions finalized before a certain date. Unless you have a court order or the biological parents filed a consent form," she recited. A speech she had clearly delivered 1,000 times. "You can request a non-identifying summary, but that will not give you names or original birth certificates, and even that takes 6 to 8 weeks to process." 6 to 8 weeks? I felt a rising panic in my chest. "I cannot wait 2 months. I just need to know the agency. Can you at least tell me the name of the agency that handled it?" She shook her head. "I cannot open the file without a judge's signature," she said. "If you want to pursue this, you need to file a petition with the Orphans' Court, or you can hire a confidential intermediary." She slid a pamphlet across the counter. It was trifolded and printed on cheap blue paper. "Navigating your search." "Next," she called out. I walked out of the building into the blinding sunshine, feeling smaller than I had in years. The system was designed to protect secrets, not reveal them. Denise had known this. She knew that the tax benefit joke was safe because the paperwork was buried under layers of red tape and statutes. I sat in my car and opened the pamphlet. It listed a few nonprofit organizations that acted as intermediaries. I dialed the number for one called Keystone Adoption Search Support. A woman answered on the third ring. Her voice was soft, maternal. "Search support. This is Carol." "Hi," I said, my voice cracking. "I need help finding my records. My adoptive mother gave me some conflicting information, and I need to verify how I was placed. I can help you get started," Carol said, "but I have to warn you, the backlog is significant. We are looking at a minimum of 3 months before a searcher can even pull your docket." 3 months? The timeline stretched out before me like a prison sentence. 3 months of not knowing. 3 months of Denise spinning her narrative while I waited for a clerk to open a box in a basement. "I feel like I'm going crazy." I whispered, "You are not crazy," Carol said firmly. "You are seeking clarity. Fill out the forms on our website. Get them notarized. Send them in. It is the first step. Control what you can control. I hung up and stared at the dashboard. Control what you can control. I drove home, my mind racing. I needed an anchor. I needed something that wasn't locked behind a court seal. I thought of my father, Mark. He had said he didn't know the details, that he just signed what Denise told him to sign. But Mark was a hoarder of paper. He was the kind of man who kept instruction manuals for toasters he threw away in 1999. I dialed his number. "Dad?" I asked when he picked up. "Lillian," he said. He sounded wary. "Have you spoken to your mother?" "No," I said, "and I'm not going to until I have facts. Dad, I need you to do something for me. I need you to look for any old paperwork from when I was little, insurance forms, school enrollments, anything from that first year I came to live with you. Lillian, I do not know." "Please," I interrupted. She humiliated me. She told everyone I was a tax write-off. If that is not true, help me prove it. If it is true, I deserve to know. I heard him sigh. A long, ragged exhale. "I have a box in the garage," he said, "the important documents file from the old house. I took it when I moved to Ohio. Go look." I said, "Please, I will wait." I stayed on the line while he clattered around. I heard the sound of a garage door opening, the rustle of cardboard, the muttering of a man looking for a needle in a haystack. 10 minutes passed. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Okay," he said, breathless. I found a folder. It is mostly old tax returns and mortgage stuff. Look for 1991 or 1992. I said, "Look for my name." Paper crinkled. "Here is your immunization record. Here is a preschool application, so wait." "What?" I sat up straighter. "Here is a copy of an enrollment form for my health insurance through the union," he said. "From the steel plant. Read it to me," I commanded. "It lists you as a dependent," he said. "Name, Lillian Marie Bailey. Date of birth, February 12th, 1989. "Okay, that is normal." I said, "Wait," he said. "Under relationship to subscriber, there is a checkbox. It is not checked." "Child. What is checked?" He paused. "It is checked ward," he said. And next to it, someone typed in legal guardianship. "Guardianship? Why would I be a ward?" I asked. "If you adopted me, I would be your child." "Legally, I do not know," Mark said. "But there is a date here. Guardianship, effective date, October 14th, 1991. October. I did the math. I was almost 3 years old in October of 91. Denise always told me they brought me home in the spring. "Dad, does it say adoption pending? Does it say anything else?" "No," he said, "just guardianship, and there is a note in the margin. In your mother's handwriting, it says, 'Verify subsidy eligibility.'" The world tilted on its axis. "Verify subsidy eligibility. That is not about loving a child." I said, my voice cold, "That is about getting paid. Send me a picture of that document. Dad, right now." I hung up and waited. When the image popped up on my screen, I zoomed in. There it was. Ward, guardianship, verify subsidy eligibility. This was the anchor. It wasn't a feeling. It wasn't a memory that could be gaslit away. It was a piece of paper that contradicted the story of the happy, desperate couple adopting a baby. You don't take guardianship of a child you adopted unless the adoption hasn't happened yet, or unless you are trying to work the system. I printed the image and taped it to the wall above my desk. It was the first brick in the wall of truth I was going to build. By Wednesday, the double life I was leading began to bleed into my work. I was a senior marketing coordinator. My job was to track metrics, manage ad spend, and ensure that our clients looked good. It required focus, precision, and a cheerful disposition. I had none of those things. I sat in the conference room during the weekly strategy meeting. Staring at a PowerPoint slide about Q3 deliverables, the words swam before my eyes. Instead of click-through rates, I was thinking about the difference between guardianship and adoption. I was wondering how much a monthly subsidy was in 1991. "Lillian?" I snapped my head up. Sarah, my supervisor, was looking at me. The entire table was looking at me. I am sorry. I said, "Could you repeat the question?" Sarah frowned. I asked for the conversion data on the Alpha campaign. The report was due this morning. I froze. I had completely forgotten. The report was sitting half-finished on my desktop, buried under open tabs about Pennsylvania family law. I have not finished finalizing it. I stammered. I ran into a data discrepancy. I can have it to you by end of day. Sarah's eyes narrowed. This was unlike me. I was the reliable one, the one who color-coded her spreadsheets. "See me after the meeting," she said. The rest of the hour was torture. When the room cleared, Sarah closed the door and crossed her arms. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "You've been checking out all week. You missed the deadline, and you look like you have not slept." "I am having some family issues," I said, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. "I am sorry to hear that," Sarah said. "Not unkindly, but we have a client launch next week. I need you here, Lillian. I need you focused. If you need to take time, but do not come here and ghost us. I cannot take time." I said quickly, "I need the distraction. I promise. I will get it done." I walked back to my desk, my face burning. I realized then how fragile my stability actually was. I had built a life on being competent, on being the girl who had it together. Denise's bomb hadn't just blown up my past. It was sending shrapnel into my future. If I lost this job, I lost my health insurance, I lost my mortgage payments, I lost the ability to hire a lawyer if I needed one. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Denise. It was the 5th one that day. "Thinking of you. Honey, I found that recipe for the lemon tart you like. I can make it this weekend." It was a love bomb, classic Denise. She would detonate a grenade and then offer you a cookie. I ignored it. 2 hours later. "Are you still mad? Honestly, Lillian, life is too short to hold grudges over a joke." And then, just as I was leaving the office, a shift in tone. "People are going to start asking questions if you keep ignoring your mother. You do not want to embarrass the family, do you?" And finally, the threat masked as advice. "You will regret digging into things you do not understand. Some doors are closed for a reason." I sat in my car in the parking garage and read the messages over and over. She was scared. The shift from lemon tart to "you will regret digging" happened in the span of 4 hours. She knew I was looking. I drove straight to Becca's house. Becca was the only person who knew the whole story. I sat at her kitchen island while she poured me a glass of wine. I showed her the picture of the insurance form. "Guardianship," Becca said, studying the image. "That means the state was involved, right? Like foster care?" "Maybe," I said, "or kinship care." But why would she lie about it? Why say adoption for 30 years if it started as something else? "Because the money is different," Becca said. She tapped the note in the margin. "Subsidy eligibility. Foster parents get paid a stipend. Adoptive parents usually don't, unless the child has special needs." I felt sick. Was I a foster kid she just never returned? "I need a boundary." "Becca," I said, "I cannot talk to her every time I see her name on my phone. My heart stops. She is trying to manipulate me back into compliance. Then block her." Becca said, "I cannot block her. If I block her, she will show up at my apartment. She has a key. Change the locks." Becca said. I stared at her. Change the locks. It seemed so extreme. But then I remembered the way Denise had looked at the party. The coldness in her eyes when she told me to fix my face. "I am going to change the locks," I said, "and I am going to tell her that I am taking a break." I typed out a text. I deleted it. I typed it again. "Mom, I need space to process what you said at the party. I am not going to discuss this with you or the family until I have reviewed the records myself. Do not come over. Do not call me. I will reach out when I'm ready." I hit send before I could lose my nerve. It felt terrifying. I had never defied Denise. Not really. I had always been the good daughter, the one who smoothed things over. Drawing a line in the sand felt like an act of war. but it also felt like taking a breath of fresh air after holding it for a week. The silence lasted for 2 days. Then, on Saturday morning, my phone rang. It was Aunt Linda. I hesitated. Linda was Denise's sister, but she had always been the softer one, the peacekeeper. "Hello?" I answered. "Lillian," Linda chirped. Her voice was too bright, too loud. "How are you?" "Sweetie? We missed you at bingo last night. I have been busy." "Aunt Linda," I said, guarding my tone. "Listen," she said, dropping the volume to a conspiratorial whisper. "We are all just so worried about you. Your mom is a wreck. She says you won't talk to her. I set a boundary. I said, I need time. Of course, Linda soothed. But you know how Denise gets. She is just frantic. Look, why don't you come to brunch tomorrow? Just a few of us. Me, Uncle Jerry, your cousin Mike. We can go to the omelet shop. No drama. Just family. We can clear the air." My stomach clenched. Clear the air was code for pressure you until you apologize. "Is Mom coming?" I asked. "No," Linda promised. "Just us. We want to see you. We want to make sure you are okay." I hesitated. If I said no, I looked like the unreasonable one. I looked like the unstable daughter they were trying to paint me as. If I went, I could show them I was calm, rational, and fine. "Okay," I said, "but no ambushes. No ambushes." She promised. Sunday morning. I dressed in my most professional casual clothes, a blazer and jeans. I wanted to look put together. I met them at the restaurant. Linda, Jerry, and Mike were already seated in a booth. When I slid in, the conversation stopped abruptly. "Hi, everyone," I said, forcing a smile. "Lillian, you look tired," Linda said, tilting her head. "Are you sleeping?" "I am fine," I said, unfolding my napkin. "Just busy with work." We ordered. The waitress poured coffee. The air was thick with unsaid things. "So," Uncle Jerry started, buttering his toast aggressively. "Your mom says you are digging up old tax returns?" I looked at him. Denise hadn't wasted any time spinning the story. "I am looking for my adoption records," I corrected, "because Mom said at my birthday that the adoption was a tax scheme." Jerry chuckled. "Oh, Lillian, you know Denise. She has a weird sense of humor. She didn't mean it literally. She was pretty specific." I said, "And I found a document that says I was a ward of the state, not an adopted child. In 1991, the table went quiet. Linda exchanged a look with Jerry. It was a look I knew well, the manage the situation look. "Honey," Linda said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. Her palm was damp. "You have to understand. Things were hard for Denise back then. She wanted a baby so badly, and you were a complicated situation." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Complicated how?" Linda sighed. "We just worry that you are obsessing over paperwork and missing the big picture. Denise sacrificed so much to raise you. She gave up her career. She dealt with all your medical issues." "My medical issues?" I asked. "I had asthma as a kid. That is hardly a tragedy. It was expensive." Jerry grunted. "That is not the point." Linda interjected quickly. "The point is, she loves you. And this digging, it seems a little manic. Lillian, are you seeing anyone? Professionally?" I stared at her. The trap had sprung. They weren't here to hear my side. They were here to diagnose me. I am not manic, Aunt Linda. I am looking for the truth about my own life. Maybe you should talk to someone. Mike chimed in, looking at his phone. Like a therapist. "You seem really on edge." I looked around the table. Their faces were masks of concern. But underneath, there was judgment. They had decided on the narrative. Lillian is having a breakdown. Lillian is ungrateful. Poor Denise is the victim of a hysterical daughter. If they could convince themselves I was crazy, they didn't have to listen to what I found. They didn't have to confront the fact that their sister might be a fraud. I stood up. "I am not staying for this." I said, "Lillian, sit down," Jerry commanded. "You are making a scene." "I am not making a scene," I said, my voice steady. Though my knees were shaking, "I am leaving." And for the record, asking for the truth isn't mental illness, but lying to your daughter for 30 years is pathological. I threw a $20 bill on the table to cover my coffee and uneaten eggs. I walked out of the restaurant. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. I could hear the whispers starting before the door even swung shut behind me. I got into my car and locked the doors. I took a deep breath. They were circling the wagons. They were protecting Denise, which meant they knew, or at least, they suspected enough to be afraid of what I might find. I wasn't just fighting my mother anymore. I was fighting the entire family infrastructure. My phone pinged. A text from Aunt Linda. "We are just trying to help you. Lillian, please consider getting some help. We love you." I deleted the thread. I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel. I didn't feel crazy. For the first time in a week, I felt focused. They wanted to make me the problem? Fine. I would be the problem. I would be the problem that didn't go away until every single piece of paper was out in the light. I pulled into my driveway and looked at the front door. I had changed the locks yesterday. It was a small physical barrier, but it meant everything. I walked inside, went to my desk, and looked at the insurance form taped to the wall. Ward. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a ward, a project, a revenue stream. I sat down at my computer and opened a new tab. Family Law Attorneys, Westbridge, PA. It was time to stop asking nicely. It was time to hire a professional. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, wedged between a flyer for a pizza place and a pre-approved credit card offer. It was a standard manila envelope, unassuming and flat, with a return address from the fictional nonprofit Keystone Adoption Search Support. I stood in the hallway of my apartment building, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had been waiting for weeks for this, checking the mail with a fervor that bordered on obsessive. I carried it upstairs and set it on the kitchen counter. I made a cup of tea. I wiped down the counter. I was stalling. I was terrified that the envelope was empty, or worse, that it contained everything I didn't want to know. When I finally slit the top open with a paring knife, I found 3 sheets of paper. They were photocopies of photocopies, grainy and speckled with black dots from a dirty scanner. It was not a full file. There was no original birth certificate with a stranger's name on it. There were no medical records from a biological mother. Instead, there was a docket summary from the Court of Common Pleas in a neighboring county, dated February of 1992. I scanned the legalese, my eyes tripping over terms I didn't fully understand. In re, minor child L.M., petition for kinship placement/guardianship, status, granted, review. Hearing scheduled, August 1992. I frowned. Kinship placement? That term usually implied a blood relative or someone with a significant prior relationship to the child. Denise and Mark were not related to me. They had always been clear about that. We were strangers who became family, and then, lower down on the page, another entry from a year later. In 1993. Petition to amend. Status, finalization of adoption. There was a gap of almost 2 years between when I entered their home and when I was legally adopted. I looked at the dates again. August 1992. Denise always talked about 1992. She called it the happiest year of her life. She had framed it as the year they finally felt like a complete family. The year they took me to Disney World for the first time. The year they bought the minivan. But according to this paper, 1992 was a year of court hearings and status reviews. It was a year where I wasn't their daughter. But a case number under review. I needed a translator. I needed someone who spoke the language of the system. I called the number for Holloway and Associates, a family law firm in downtown Westbridge that I had found online. They specialized in complex family litigation. I didn't know if my family was complex or just fraudulent, but I was willing to pay $300 an hour to find out. 2 days later, I sat in the office of Mr. Holloway. He was a man in his 50s with a reassuringly expensive suit and a desk uncluttered by sentiment. He took the photocopies I had brought and adjusted his glasses. He read in silence for a long time. The only sound in the room was the hum of the air conditioning and the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, he looked up. "This is interesting," he said. "Interesting good or interesting bad?" I asked. "Interesting unusual," he corrected. In the early 90s, private adoption usually followed a specific track. You get the baby, you file the intent to adopt, and you finalize within 6 months to a year. It is a straight line. He tapped the paper. "This is a zigzag." He leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. "You see here, where it says kinship placement, and then guardianship? That suggests the state was involved in the placement initially. It wasn't a private handover from a birth mother to your parents. You were likely in the system, or at risk of entering the system, and your parents stepped in as a resource family first. But they told me it was a private adoption." I said, "They said a lawyer arranged it. That might be the story they told." Holloway said, "But this docket number is from the dependency court, not the orphans court. Dependency court handles cases of neglect, abuse, or truancy. It handles foster care." He paused, gauging my reaction. "Here is the thing about guardianship versus adoption. Lillian, guardianship is often subsidized. If you take guardianship of a child from the state, you often receive a monthly stipend to help cover the costs of care. Medical cards. Clothing allowances. It is designed to support families who are taking in children with limited resources. And adoption?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Adoption transfers full legal and financial responsibility to the parents," he said. "Once you adopt, the state usually stops paying, unless the child is designated as special needs or hard to place." He looked back at the document. "The timeline here is what catches my eye. They held guardianship for nearly 2 years. That is 2 years of potential state checks, 2 years of medical assistance, and then, in 1993, they moved to adopt. Why would they wait?" I asked. "Maybe they weren't sure," Holloway said. "Or maybe the benefits ran out. Or maybe the tax laws changed. In 1993, there were significant changes to how the IRS viewed dependency exemptions and the earned income tax credit. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. So, I asked, keeping my voice level, "It is possible that they kept me as a foster child or a ward for 2 years to collect a check, and then adopted me when it became more tax advantageous to claim me as a dependent? It is a theory," Holloway said carefully. "I cannot say for certain without the full financial records, but legally? Yes, the framework exists. The fact that your mother made a joke about tax benefits suggests she was very aware of the financial implications of your legal status." I left his office feeling heavy, as if gravity had doubled its pull on my body. I sat in my car in the parking garage and stared at the concrete wall. I repeated the mantra I had been using to keep myself sane. This is not about adoption. Adoption is beautiful. Adoption creates families. My grief wasn't about the fact that I wasn't their biological child. I had made peace with that decades ago. My grief was about the transaction. It was about the idea that my very presence in their home had been calculated on a ledger. I wasn't a daughter. I was an asset. When I got home, I pulled out the box of papers my father had found. I dug deeper this time. I wasn't looking for school records anymore. I was looking for the money. I found a stack of old tax return copies from the mid-90s. Mark, in his chaotic filing system, had shoved them into a folder labeled House. I spread them out on the dining room table. 1991, 1992, 1993. I wasn't a forensic accountant, but the pattern was visible even to me. In 1991 and 92, under the section for dependents, my name was listed, but the box for child wasn't checked in the standard way. There was a handwritten code next to it, and the income reported included a line item for non-taxable state assistance. Then, in 1993, the assistance line disappeared. Instead, there was a large deduction, the adoption tax credit. It was a massive write-off that reduced their tax liability to almost zero. I looked at the numbers. The timing was surgical. They had switched my status exactly when the benefits of one program waned and another became available. I felt sick. I physically gagged. I thought about the happiest year of her life, 1992, the year they were getting paid to keep me. I needed to talk to my father. I needed to know how much he knew. I dialed his number, my hand shaking. "Dad," I said when he answered. "Lillian," he said. He sounded tired. "Please tell me you are not still doing this. I am looking at the tax returns." "Dad," I said, "I see the state assistance in 92. I see the credit in 93. There was silence on the line. "Dad," I said, "did you know? Did you know we were living on state money?" Mark sighed. It was a sound of defeat. "Lillian, we didn't have a lot of money back then. The plant was cutting hours. The strike was looming. We were scared." "So you used me?" I asked. "You brought a child into your home to pay the bills?" "No," he protested. "We wanted you. But Denise, she found out about these programs. She said it was stupid to leave money on the table if the government was offering it. She said it was reimbursement for raising you." "Reimbursement," I repeated, like I was a business expense. She was very convincing. Mark said, "You have to understand. She made it sound like we were owed it. Like we were doing the state a favor by taking you in." I closed my eyes. "And the insurance form? The one you refused to sign?" Mark hesitated. "That was later," he said quietly. "That was a few years later. She wanted me to sign something saying you had special needs, behavioral issues." "Did I?" I asked. "No," Mark said. "You were a perfect kid. A little quiet, maybe. But she said if we could get a diagnosis, we could get a higher tier of support, a disability check. And you refused?" "I refused," he said. "I told her I wasn't going to label my daughter as damaged just to get a check. She was furious. She didn't talk to me for a week. That was when I started sleeping on the couch. The marriage didn't end because of drift. It ended because he drew a line at fraud." "Thank you." "Dad," I whispered. I hung up. I stared at the phone. I knew what I had to do. I had to hear her say it. I had to hear her try to spin this. I called Denise. She picked up on the second ring. "Lillian." "Oh, thank God. I have been so worried. Are you okay? Have you stopped this nonsense?" Her voice was bright, cheery, completely disconnected from the reality I was living in. "I know about the guardianship." "Mom," I said. The silence was immediate. "I know about the hearings in Montgomery County." I continued. "I know you took state assistance for 2 years before you adopted me. And I know you tried to get Dad to sign off on a fake disability claim." "Lillian, do not be ridiculous," she snapped. Her tone shifted instantly from concern to aggression. "You do not understand how the world works. I understand that you milked the system." I said, "I understand that the tax benefit joke wasn't a joke. It was the truth. I want the name of the agency. Mom, I want to know where I came from." She laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "You think you can just demand things? After everything I did for you? You were lucky we wanted you." "Lillian!" The words hung in the air. "You were lucky we wanted you." It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. It revealed the core of our relationship. In her mind, she was the savior, and I was the lucky recipient of her benevolence. I should be grateful to be used, because the alternative was worse. "You were a difficult placement," she yelled. "No one else was lining up. We took you in. We fed you. And yes, we got some help. So what? Everyone does it." She was breathing hard. I could hear the panic rising in her voice. Then she started to cry. It was a sudden, jarring switch. "I just wanted to be a mother." She sobbed. "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you trying to destroy me?" "I am not trying to destroy you," I said calmly. "I am trying to find myself, and every time you lie, you make it harder." I hung up the phone. My hands were trembling, but not with fear, with rage. Cold, clear rage. I sat on the couch and wrapped a blanket around myself. The apartment was quiet. Sam came home an hour later. He found me sitting in the dark. "Lil?" he asked, flipping on the hallway light. He looked at the papers scattered on the table, the tax returns, the docket summary. the notes I had scribbled in angry red ink. He sat down opposite me. He looked scared. "Talk to me," he said. "Please, I feel like I'm losing you to this." I looked at his kind, worried face. I realized I had been shutting him out, treating him like a civilian in a war zone I was fighting alone. I found out I wasn't adopted right away. I said, "I was a ward for 2 years. They got paid to keep me, and then they adopted me when the tax credits looked better." Sam stared at the papers. "Jesus, Lil. And Dad told me she tried to fake a disability diagnosis to get more money," I added. Sam ran a hand through his hair. "Okay," he said, "that is horrific. But Lillian, I have to ask, does this mean there are liabilities?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, if the state was involved. If it was a dependency case, does that mean there are biological parents out there? People who might, I don't know, come looking? Or debts? If the adoption was fraudulent, is it even legal?" He was spiraling. I could see the accountant in him trying to balance the risk ledger. "I don't know." "Sam," I said honestly, "I am scared too. I am scared that my whole identity is a house of cards. But I'm not hiding anymore. I am going to find the truth. And I need you to be okay with that, even if it gets messy." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. "I am okay with messy," he said. "I just need you to tell me when the mess is happening. Don't leave me in the dark." "I won't. I promised." The next morning, my phone rang. It was Carol from Keystone Adoption Search Support. "Lillian?" she asked. "I have news." My stomach dropped. "Did you find my file?" "Not the file," she said. "The file is still caught up in the court queue. But I found a name." "A name? We have a volunteer who used to work in the records department of Montgomery County in the 90s. Carol explained. "She did some digging in the old index cards. She found the name of the caseworker assigned to your docket number." I held my breath. "Her name is Margaret Higgins," Carol said. "She is retired now, living in a retirement community about an hour from Westbridge. I reached out to her. She remembers the case." "She remembers me?" I asked. "After 30 years? She remembers your mother," Carol said. "She said Denise was memorable." "Can I talk to her?" I asked. "She agreed to a meeting," Carol said. "But Lillian, she warned me. She said the story isn't what you think it is." "I don't care," I said. "I need to know." I drove to the retirement community the next day. It was a sprawling complex of beige bungalows and manicured walking paths. Mrs. Higgins lived in Unit 4B. She was a tiny woman with white hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that were incredibly sharp behind thick glasses. She served me tea in delicate floral cups. "You have her eyes," Mrs. Higgins said, studying me. "But you don't have her manner. You are quieter." "You remember Denise?" I asked. "I do," she said. "I was a caseworker for 30 years. Dear, you forget the happy ones. You remember the ones who gave you ulcers." She took a sip of tea. "Your mother." She was very persistent. "Tell me," I said, "please, was I a foster child? Did they take me in as a kinship placement?" Mrs. Higgins set her cup down. "Not exactly," she said. "What do you mean?" "Usually, kinship care happens when a child is removed from a home and we look for relatives," she explained. "But in your case, Denise came to us. She came to the office with a lawyer. She had found you, privately, through some back channel, a girl from a rural town who was in trouble. So it was a private adoption?" I was confused. "It should have been," Mrs. Higgins said, "but Denise didn't want to file for adoption. She filed a petition for financial guardianship assistance." I stared at her. "I have never heard of that." "It was a loophole," Mrs. Higgins said grimly. "It was meant for destitute relatives who were taking in nieces or nephews. It wasn't meant for suburban couples who wanted a baby. But Denise, she had done her homework. She knew exactly which forms to file to classify you as a hard-to-place placement, even though you were a healthy newborn." She paused. She argued that because the biological mother had no prenatal care, you were at risk. She argued that because of that risk, the state should subsidize your care until you were stable. "And the court bought it?" I asked. "She had a very aggressive lawyer," Mrs. Higgins said, and the system was overwhelmed. We had caseloads of 60 kids each. Denise was offering a home. The judge signed off on the guardianship to close the file. She looked at me with pity. She didn't enter the system to save a child. Lillian. She entered the system to get the state to pay for her to have one. She treated the Department of Human Services like a discount coupon. I felt the room spin. It was worse than I thought. It wasn't just that she claimed benefits later. It was that the entire foundation of my placement was a grift. She had manipulated the child welfare system, clogging up resources meant for kids in desperate need, just so she could get a subsidized baby. She came in every month. Mrs. Higgins continued, to sign the vouchers. Most foster parents asked about resources, about therapy, about support groups. Denise only ever asked about the reimbursement rates. She would bring a calculator. I felt tears prick my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of sheer, unadulterated humiliation. Thank you, I whispered. Mrs. Higgins reached out and patted my hand. Her skin was dry and cool like paper. You are not her sin, Lillian, she said firmly. You are just the evidence. I walked back to my car. The sun was shining. Birds were singing. It was a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. You are just the evidence. She was right. I was the evidence. And Denise had spent 33 years trying to hide the evidence in plain sight, wrapping it in birthday parties and family photos. But the evidence was awake now, and the evidence was coming for her. I pulled out my phone. I had the docket number. I had the caseworker's testimony. I had the tax returns. I needed one more thing. I needed the original petition, the one where Denise argued I was damaged enough to be worth a discount. I started the car. I was going to the courthouse in the neighboring county. I was going to unseal the truth, even if I had to tear the building down brick by brick. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Denise. I hope you are happy. You have upset your father. We are family. Lillian, you are tearing us apart. I didn't reply. I put the phone in the passenger seat. I wasn't tearing the family apart. I was just turning on the lights. And if the structure couldn't stand the glare, that wasn't my fault. I drove toward the highway. The road ahead was clear. I knew exactly where I was going. The drive to the Montgomery County Courthouse took 45 minutes, a stretch of highway that cut through the rolling green hills of Pennsylvania. I sat in the passenger seat of Mr. Holloway's sedan, watching the landscape blur. It was a beautiful day, the kind of day Denise would have spent gardening, posting photos of her hydrangeas with captions about the simple joys of life. I felt like I was on my way to an execution. I just wasn't sure if it was mine or hers. Mr. Holloway was quiet. He was a man who understood that in family law. Silence was often the only respectful response to the wreckage he witnessed. We parked in a concrete garage that smelled of damp stone and exhaust. The courthouse was an imposing brick building from the turn of the century, designed to make you feel small and obedient. We had an appointment with a clerk in the archives division, because Mr. Holloway had filed a specific motion arguing that I, as the subject of the guardianship, had good cause to view the records. A judge had granted us limited access. We couldn't take photos, and we couldn't take the original files. But we could look. The clerk, a young man with a beard and a lanyard, handed Mr. Holloway a thick folder. You have 30 minutes, he said. We sat at a wooden table in a small, windowless room. Mr. Holloway opened the file. The smell of old paper, dust, acid, and time wafted up. He turned the pages slowly, his finger tracing the lines of typed text. Here it is, he said softly. I leaned in. It was a document titled Petition for Emergency Financial Guardianship. It was dated November 14th, 1991. I scanned the paragraphs. The language was dry, legalistic, and devastating. Petitioner, Denise Bailey, asserts that the minor child, Lillian Doe, is in need of immediate placement due to the indigence and instability of the biological mother. Petitioner requests financial assistance under the State Kinship Care Subsidy Program to provide for the child's basic needs, including medical care, clothing, and sustenance. Petitioner asserts that without said subsidy, the household lacks the resources to maintain the placement. I stared at the words, lacks the resources. But look at this, mister, Holloway said, flipping 2 pages forward. This is dated 3 weeks later, an amendment. The document was a handwritten note attached to a formal motion. The handwriting was Denise's. I knew those loops, the sharp slant of her T's. Petitioner inquires regarding the maximum duration of subsidy eligibility prior to finalization of adoption. Petitioner requests delay of adoption finalization until the end of the fiscal eligibility period. Mr. Holloway looked at me over the top of his reading glasses. Do you understand what this means, Lillian? I nodded, my throat tight. It means she asked to delay adopting me so she could keep getting the checks. I said, it means the plan changed midstream, he corrected, or perhaps the plan was always to maximize the revenue. See here? The initial petition claims poverty, lacks resources, but in your father's tax returns from 1991, which you showed me, their income was stable. Not wealthy, but certainly not indigent. She pleaded poverty to the court to qualify for the subsidy, then delayed the adoption to keep that subsidy running for 24 months. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just a tax write-off, it was fraud. She had lied to a judge about being too poor to care for me, just so the state would pay her to do it. We left the courthouse in silence. I felt hollowed out. I had spent my life thinking I was a miracle, a gift that completed their family. In reality, I was a government contract. I needed to see Mrs. Higgins again. The brief conversation at her retirement home hadn't been enough. I needed to look her in the eye with these facts. I called her from the car and asked if she could meet me at a coffee shop near her complex. She agreed, sounding resigned. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a corner table, nursing a cup of Earl Grey. She looked frail, but her eyes were steady. You went to the archives, she stated. It wasn't a question. I saw the petition, I said, sitting down. I saw where she asked to delay the adoption. Mrs. Higgins nodded slowly. I remember that. She said, it was unusual. Most families want to finalize as soon as possible. They want the security. They want the name change. Your mother. She wanted to know the cutoff dates. Did she ever ask about me? I asked. I needed to know. Did she ask about my health? My biological mother? Anything? Mrs. Higgins looked down at her tea. She asked what documents were needed to qualify for the higher tier of care. She said softly, there was a tiered system back then. Basic care, specialized care, therapeutic care. The rates were different. She repeatedly asked me if your asthma diagnosis would bump you into the specialized tier. I closed my eyes. The jokes about me being expensive, the way she sighed when she paid for my inhalers. It wasn't frustration at the cost. It was frustration that the cost wasn't being reimbursed. I don't understand, I whispered. She raised me. She brushed my hair. She made me soup when I was sick. How could she do all that and still see me as a line item? Mrs. Higgins reached across the table and touched my hand. Her skin was dry, like parchment. People are complicated. Lillian, she probably did love you, in her own way, but she loved the control more. And she loved the deal. Some people, they cannot feel safe unless they feel like they have won. And getting the state to pay for her daughter? To her, that was winning. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I just sat there and let the grief wash over me. It was a quiet, heavy thing. I grieved for the little girl who had tried so hard to be good, to be worthy, never realizing that her worth had already been calculated and capped by a state budget. I was not a daughter, I was a commodity. The drive home was a blur of gray highway and gray thoughts. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was Sam. I picked up, putting it on speaker. Hey, I said, I am on my way back. Lillian. Sam's voice was tight. Where are you? I am driving back from Montgomery County. Why? Your mom called me, he said. My hands tightened on the wheel. Of course she did. What did she say? She was crying. Sam said, She said she is really worried about you. She said you are having a breakdown. She told me you have been sending her abusive texts and that you are delusional. She asked if I had noticed you acting erratic lately. The gaslighting was escalating. She was trying to recruit him. She was trying to plant the seed of doubt so that when I finally spoke the truth, he would view it through the lens of my instability. I felt a spike of fear. Sam was logical. Denise was persuasive. What did you tell her? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I told her that the only erratic thing I have seen is her behavior at the birthday party. Sam said firmly. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I told her you are not having a breakdown. Sam continued. I told her you are being incredibly thorough, and I told her not to call me to discuss your mental health again. I started to cry. Silent, hot tears that tracked down my cheeks. Thank you, I whispered. Lil, Sam said, his voice softening. She sounded scared. Not worried, mother scared. Cornered animal scared. You are getting close to something she really doesn't want you to find. I know, I said. I am almost home. When I walked into the apartment, Sam was waiting. He hugged me. A solid, grounding embrace that put my broken pieces back together for a moment. Then he handed me a printout. Your lawyer emailed this while you were driving. He said, I took the paper. It was from Mr. Holloway, Lillian. In the course of cross-referencing the dates from the guardianship petition, my paralegal found a related civil filing in the Court of Common Pleas. On December 10th, 1991, less than a month after your mother filed for financial guardianship, Denise Bailey co-signed a secured personal loan with a distinct relative. A Mr. Arthur Miller. The loan amount was for $15,000. This is significant because obtaining a loan of that size in 1991 often required proof of household stability and dependent count. It is possible she used the guardianship decree not just for the subsidy, but as proof of household size to qualify for the loan, or perhaps promised the subsidy income as part of the repayment plan. We are looking into whether the loan was ever defaulted on. Regards, James Holloway. $15,000 in 1991. That was a fortune. That was a new car. That was a renovation. Arthur Miller. The name was vaguely familiar. A cousin of my grandfather? I remembered a man with a smoker's cough who used to come to barbecues when I was very small. She leveraged me, I said, staring at the paper. She didn't just take the state money. She used my existence to secure a loan. It matches the timeline, Sam said, pointing to the date. December. She files for guardianship in November. She gets the loan in December. She needed you on paper to look like a stable family unit to the bank. I felt a sudden, burning need to confront the person who had been the family historian, the one who knew where all the bodies were buried because she had helped dig the holes. Aunt Linda. I didn't call. I drove to her house. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. Linda lived in a pristine colonial on the other side of Westbridge. When she opened the door, her smile faltered. Lillian? She said. We weren't expecting you. I need to talk to you. Aunt Linda. Alone. She looked at my face and saw that I wasn't going to be turned away. She stepped back. Come in. Uncle Jerry is in the den watching the game. We can go to the sunroom. We sat on wicker furniture with floral cushions. Linda clasped her hands in her lap. She looked nervous. I know about the guardianship. I said, I know she took state money for 2 years, and I know about the loan she took out with Arthur Miller in 91. Linda flinched at the name Arthur Miller. You know, I said, you have always known. Linda sighed. It was a long, deflating sound. She slumped in her chair, the perfect hostess facade cracking. It was a different time. Lillian, she said weakly. Denise was desperate. She wanted to keep up appearances. Mark's hours had been cut. They were drowning in debt. So she bought a baby? I asked. No, Linda said, her eyes wide. She wanted you. But she also saw opportunities. She was always good at that, finding the angle. The angle. I repeated. I was an angle. She bragged about it. Didn't she? I asked. Linda looked away. She had a few glasses of wine one Thanksgiving. Linda admitted, years ago. She told me she had made the system work for her. She said the state owed her for taking a child off their hands. She called it a management fee. I felt sick. A management fee. And you didn't say anything? I asked. You let her raise me thinking I was a cherished daughter while she was laughing about her management fee? It was harmless. Lillian, Linda insisted. You were fed. You were clothed. You went to a good school. Who cares if she got a little help from the state? Who cares if she used the paperwork to get a loan? It didn't hurt you. It hurt me. I said, my voice shaking. It hurts me now. Because my entire life is built on a lie, and because she humiliated me at my birthday party to cover up her own guilt. Linda stood up. You are being too hard on her. She is your mother. She is a fraud. I said, and you are an accomplice. I walked out of the sunroom. As I passed the kitchen, I saw a calendar on the wall. It was one of those family organizers with everyone's birthdays listed. I saw my name, Lillian's birthday. I looked at the date, February 12th, and then I remembered something small and nagging. I drove home and went straight to my lockbox. I pulled out my passport and my Social Security card. I looked at the issue date on the Social Security card. Usually, parents get a Social Security number for their child within the first year of life. It's needed for tax returns. My card had an issue date of 1994. That was 3 years after I was placed with them. Why wait 3 years? Unless she was using a different number before that, or unless she didn't want the number to be tracked to her until the adoption was finalized and the subsidies stopped. I sat at my computer and started searching for Social Security number changes adoption. I found a forum where people discussed the nightmare of credit reports for adopted children. Sometimes, the parents used the child's pre-adoption ID for credit. Sometimes, they mixed files. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Lillian? It's Martha. Martha Evans. Martha was a family friend, a woman who had been in Denise's book club for 20 years. She was kind, but distant. Hi. Martha? I said, surprised. Is everything okay? I heard about what happened at the party, Martha said. Her voice was hushed. And I heard Denise is telling everyone you are having a breakdown. She paused. I don't believe her. Lillian, Denise has always been creative with the truth. Thank you, Martha. I am calling because, well, I remembered something, and I thought you should know. What is it? About 5 years ago. Martha said, you were already out of the house, 27 or 28. Denise and I were having coffee, and she was complaining about a refinance she was trying to do on the house. She was stressed about the rates. Okay. She made a call while I was there, Martha said, to the mortgage broker, and she was reading off numbers. She had a piece of paper, and I heard her say, no, use Lillian's number for the secondary co-applicant. Her score is better. I froze. She used my number? I asked. For a mortgage refinance? She definitely read a Social Security number. Martha said, and she definitely said your name. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought maybe you were helping them out. But with everything I am hearing now... Martha, are you sure? I am sure, she said. She was very specific. She said, put it under Lillian. I hung up the phone. The room was spinning. This wasn't about 1991 anymore. This wasn't about ancient history or childhood subsidies. 5 years ago, I was an adult. I was living on my own. If she had used my Social Security number to co-sign a mortgage or refinance a loan without my knowledge, that was identity theft. That was a federal crime. I ran to my computer. I didn't just need to look at old documents. I need to look at my documents, my current financial life. Sam! I yelled. Sam, bring your laptop. He came running. What is it? We need to pull my full credit report. I said, not the free summary, the full, detailed history from all 3 bureaus, right now. Why? Sam asked, booting up his machine. Because Martha thinks Denise used my Social Security number for a refinance 5 years ago. I said. Sam went pale. He typed furiously. We paid the fee for the expedited report. We waited for the progress bar to load. It felt like the longest 10 seconds of my life. The report popped up. We scrolled past my student loans, past my car payment, past my credit cards, and there it was. Mortgage inquiry, Westbridge Savings Loan. Date, August 2018. Status, open account, joint holder, Denise Bailey. She hadn't just inquired, she had opened it. My name was on the mortgage of her house. I stared at the screen. She stole my identity, I whispered. She didn't just adopt me for the tax benefits. She kept me for the credit score. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my gut. The grief was gone. The confusion was gone. All that was left was the icy clarity of a woman who realizes she is in a cage match with her own mother. I looked at Sam. Freeze it, I said. Freeze everything. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Put a lock on my social. Alert the bank. Lillian, Sam said, his voice grave. If we report this as fraud, if we tell the bank you didn't sign that, I know. I said, it triggers a criminal investigation. He looked at me. Are you ready for that? I looked at the entry on the screen. Joint holder. She had smiled at me at Christmas, handed me gifts, asked about my job, all while knowing she was anchoring her debt to my name. She did this. I said, I am just filing the paperwork. I picked up my phone. I wasn't calling Denise. Not yet. I texted Mr. Holloway. We need to meet tomorrow. It's not just the adoption, it's identity theft. I want to know my options for prosecution. Then I sat back in the chair. Denise thought I was unstable. She thought I was having a breakdown. She told the family I was erratic. She had no idea. I wasn't erratic. I was auditing her, and the audit was just beginning. The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in the apartment. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I was doing the mundane, terrifying work of erasing myself from my mother's reach. Sam sat next to me, his presence a warm weight against my shoulder. But I did the typing. It had to be my fingers. It had to be my choice. I had already seen the mortgage. That was the headline. The screaming siren that had turned my anxiety into a cold, hard knot of dread. But as I scrolled further down the detailed credit report, past the active accounts and into the inquiries section, I saw the pattern. It wasn't just the big house loan. It was the little things. There was an inquiry from a payday lender in 2019, denied. There was an application for a store credit card at a high-end department store in 2020, approved, then closed 3 months later. There was a hard pull from an auto leasing company just 6 months ago. I stared at the name of the leasing company, Prestige Motors. I drove a 5-year-old sedan that I had paid off 2 years ago. I had never walked into a Prestige Motors in my life. It is not just one loan, Sam whispered, reading over my shoulder. She has been using your credit profile as a backup battery for years. Whenever she needs a charge, she plugs into you. I didn't cry. I think I had run out of tears in the last week. Instead, I felt a strange, vibrating clarity. This was not a mistake. This was not a clerical error. This was predation. I opened the tab for Equifax. I am freezing it. I said. I clicked the button, place security freeze. I entered my social security number, the number she had memorized, the number she likely had written on a post-it note in her purse. I created a PIN. I made it 20 characters long, a random string of letters and numbers that had no connection to my birthday, my dog's name, or the street I grew up on. I did the same for TransUnion, then Experian. Next, I went to my bank accounts. I changed every password. I set up 2-factor authentication, linking it to an authenticator app on my phone, not my phone number, just in case she knew how to SIM swap. I removed her as a beneficiary on my life insurance policy. I revoked the medical power of attorney I had signed when I had surgery 3 years ago. It was a digital exorcism. I am sorry. I whispered to the screen as I clicked Save Changes. I am so sorry we are here. I wasn't talking to Denise. I was talking to the version of myself that had trusted her. I was saying goodbye to the daughter who believed that a mother's love was a safe harbor, not a financial strategy. Sam went to bed at 4. I stayed up until dawn, printing every confirmation screen, every report, every timestamp. I put them in a binder. The binder was red. It looked like a war manual. 2 days later, on a Thursday evening, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I looked through the peephole. There was a specific cadence to the way Denise pressed a doorbell. 3 short bursts, demanding and cheery. I stood in the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had changed the locks, a physical boundary I had set after the brunch disaster. I heard the scratch of metal against metal. She was trying her key. It didn't turn. I heard a muffled sound of frustration. A jiggle of the handle, then a sharp knock. "Lillian? Lillian, I know you are home. Your car is in the spot." I took a deep breath. I could pretend I wasn't there. I could hide in the bathroom like a child, but I wasn't a child. I was a 33-year-old woman with a credit freeze and a red binder. I opened the door, but I kept the chain on. Through the 3-inch gap, I saw her. She was holding a gift bag. It was silver with white tissue paper. She was wearing a beige trench coat and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lillian!" she exclaimed, her voice pitching up. "What is wrong with the lock? My key wouldn't work." "I changed the locks." "Mom," I said. Her smile faltered, then reassembled itself into a mask of confusion. "Change them? Why? Did you lose your set?" "No," I said. "I changed them because I didn't want you to have a key anymore." Denise flinched as if I had slapped her. She took a step back, clutching the gift bag to her chest. That is very hurtful. Lillian, after everything I have done for you, I just came by to drop off a little something. I saw this scarf at the boutique and thought of you. It brings out your eyes." She held up the bag. It was the classic move, the bribe, the shiny object to distract from the rot underneath. "I don't want the scarf." I said, "Lillian, please, you are acting so strange. I know you are upset about the birthday toast. It was a mistake. I am sorry, okay? I am sorry." She said the words, but they tasted like ash. It wasn't a mistake. I said through the crack, it was the truth. Denise sighed, a long, dramatic exhale that signaled she was the martyr in this play. "You are obsessed with this. You are letting one sentence ruin our relationship. Do you know how much I sacrificed for you? Do you have any idea?" I watched her. I watched the way her hands gripped the bag, the white-knuckle tension. "I gave up my career," she cried, her voice echoing in the hallway. "I gave up my freedom. I spent years driving you to doctors, to soccer, to dance. I scrubbed your floors. I paid for your college. I did everything for you. And you got paid for it," I said. She froze. "I know about the guardianship," I said. "I know about the subsidies. I know about the loan with Arthur Miller. And I know about the mortgage. Mom, I saw the credit report." Her face went pale, then red. A flash of pure, unadulterated rage crossed her features, swift and terrifying. "You have no right to snoop in my finances," she hissed. "You put my name on them," I shot back. "That makes them my finances." She stepped closer to the door, lowering her voice. "I did what I had to do to survive. We were a family. We shared burdens. You should be grateful I didn't leave you in the system. Do you know what happens to girls in the system? Lillian? They get chewed up. I saved you. You used me." I said, "I saved you," she screamed, slamming her hand against the door frame. "And this is how you repay me? By locking me out? By freezing me out?" I looked at her, really looked at her. I didn't see a mother anymore. I saw a woman who was losing her grip on her favorite asset. "Why?" I asked. The question hung in the air. "Why what?" she snapped. "Why did you say it at the party?" I asked. "If you hid it for 30 years, if you successfully buried the guardianship and the loans and the fraud, why did you announce it to a room full of people? Why blow up your own spot?" Denise stared at me. Her breathing was ragged. She looked at the door chain, then at my face. "Because you were getting too confident," she said. The words were quiet, cold, and razor-sharp. I blinked. "What?" "You were walking around like you owned the world," she said, her lip curling in a sneer. "With your job, and your fiancé, and your perfect little life. You thought you were better than us. You thought you made yourself. She leaned in, her eyes dark. I needed you to remember who made you. Lillian. I needed you to remember that you are only here because I bought you. You were getting too high and mighty. I had to take you down a peg. I stood there, paralyzed by the cruelty of it. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It wasn't a drunken mistake. It was a strategic strike. She had seen me happy, seen me independent, and her instinct was to humiliate me, to remind me that my foundation was leased, not owned. She wanted to break me so she could put me back together, because broken things need their mothers. Get off my porch, I said. Lillian, get off my porch. I slammed the door and threw the deadbolt. I slid the secondary lock into place. I sank to the floor in the hallway. Pressing my back against the wood, I listened to her footsteps retreat. I listened to her car start and drive away. Because you were getting too confident. She didn't love me. She owned me. And owners don't like it when their property starts acting like it has free will. I needed to understand the scope of the leverage. If she used my status to control me now, she must have used it before. I called Mark. My father, or the man who had played the role of father while she directed the show. Dad. I said when he answered, I need to ask you about the divorce. Lillian. He sighed. Can we not dig up the past tonight? She just came to my door. Dad. She told me she humiliated me because I was getting too confident. She admitted it. Mark was silent for a long time. She is not well. Lillian, I have tried to tell you that for years. The divorce. I pressed. Why did you give her everything? The house in Westbridge. The savings. You walked away with almost nothing. Why? Mark hesitated. She had a good lawyer, he said weakly. No, Dad, you are a stubborn man. You wouldn't just roll over unless she had something on you. What did she have? I heard the click of a lighter. He was smoking again. She threatened to go to the judge. Mark said softly. She said she would tell the court that I had been abusive, that I was unfit. Was that true? No, Mark said, his voice rising. Never. I never laid a hand on you or her. Then why were you scared? Because she said she would reveal the irregularities, Mark admitted. She said she would tell the authorities that the adoption was based on fraudulent information that I had signed off on. She said if I fought her on the assets, she would blow the whole thing up. She said we would both go to jail for fraud, and you would be sent back to the state. I felt the air leave the room. She held me hostage, I whispered. She used the threat of me losing my family to make you give her the money. She said she would take you down with us. Mark said, she said, if I go down, Lillian's life is over. Her degree, her name, it all gets flagged. I couldn't risk it. Lillian, I paid her to keep you safe. She wasn't protecting me. Dad, she was blackmailing you. I know. He said, I know. I hung up. The picture was complete. Denise wasn't just a mother who made bad financial choices. She was a woman who weaponized the people she was supposed to love. She had used me to get the subsidy. She had used me to get the loan. She had used me to win the divorce. And now, she was using my credit score to float her lifestyle. I was the golden goose, and she was ready to wring my neck if I stopped laying eggs. The next morning, Mr. Holloway called. Lillian, I have something, he said. I sat up in bed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. What is it? We got a response on the sealed summary request. It is not the full transcript, but the judge released the clerk's notes from the 1992 review hearing. Read it to me. Holloway cleared his throat. Note from Judge Patterson. The court expresses concern regarding the petitioner's focus on the financial subsidy duration. Petitioner appears resistant to finalization without guarantee of retroactive back pay. Placement is approved with conditions. Caseworker to conduct monthly unannounced visits to ensure funds are being utilized for the minor child's benefit. Conditions. I said, she was on probation. It gets more specific. Holloway said, there is a reference to a competing petition. A competing petition? Yes. It seems there was another family interested in your placement. A Mr. and Mrs. Kavanaugh from York County. Why didn't they get me? I asked, according to the notes. Denise intervened. She argued that the Kavanaughs were too old and that their home was too far from your biological relatives, even though the adoption was closed. She made a compelling case that she had better resources to handle your potential special needs. She pitched herself as the premium option. I said, and she pitched the Kavanaughs as unfit. Holloway added, she played dirty. Lillian. She wanted the placement, and she elbowed the other family out of the way. I felt a pang of loss for a life I never lived. Who were the Kavanaughs? Would they have loved me without checking the exchange rate? Would they have announced my adoption status as a punchline? I need to find out who they were. I said, I can have my investigator look. Holloway said, but Lillian, be careful. The more you find, the more dangerous she becomes. I didn't wait for the investigator. I had a name. Kavanaugh, York County, 1991. I went to the library. I used the microfiche, scrolling through old phone books and obituaries. It took 3 hours, but I found them. Robert and Ellen Kavanaugh. Ellen had passed away in 2010, but Robert was still listed in the white pages in York. I called him. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the phone. Hello? An elderly man's voice, gruff but polite. Mr. Kavanaugh? My name is Lillian Bailey. I think you might have known my mother, Denise Bailey, or maybe you might have known of me? I was born in 1989. There was a long silence. Lillian? He asked. The baby? Yes, I said. I am the baby. Oh, my goodness, he breathed. Ellen always wondered. She always prayed for you. Mr. Kavanaugh. I asked, did you want to adopt me? We did. He said, we had the nursery painted. Yellow. Ellen loved yellow. We had the car seat. We met you once. You know, at the agency. You were so small. What happened? I asked, tears streaming down my face. Your mother? Mrs. Bailey. She was very aggressive. He said, she told the social workers that we were financially unstable. She told them I had a heart condition. I didn't have a heart condition. Lillian, I was a marathon runner. But she planted the doubt, and back then, they listened to the loudest voice. She lied. I said, she won. He said simply, and we were heartbroken. We ended up adopting our son, David, 2 years later, but we never forgot you. I hung up the phone and put my head on the library desk. I sobbed. I sobbed for the yellow nursery. I sobbed for the lies. I sobbed because I had been stolen, not saved. She hadn't rescued me from the system. She had snatched me from a loving home because she wanted the check that came with my bassinet. I met Becca for coffee on Saturday. I looked like a ghost. I hadn't slept in 3 days. She handed me a latte. Okay, she said. I have been doing recon. Recon? I called my cousin who talks to your Aunt Linda's neighbor. It is a small town. Lil, people talk. What is she saying? I asked. Denise is on a warpath, Becca said grimly. She is telling everyone that you are unwell. She is saying that you have been brainwashed by Sam. And she is dropping hints that you were never really a Bailey. What does that mean? She is telling people that she should have sent you back when you were a teenager because you had bad blood. She is soft-launching the idea that you are an outsider. She wants to isolate you. If you speak up now, she wants everyone to think it is just the ramblings of an ungrateful, mentally ill stray that she tried to save. I gripped the paper cup. She is trying to discredit the witness. I said, exactly. Becca said, if she makes you look crazy, the truth looks like a delusion. I cannot let her do that. I said, I cannot let her rewrite the ending. So what do we do? Becca asked. I looked at the calendar on my phone. Next Sunday, I said, the 50th wedding anniversary party for Great Uncle Stan. Becca's eyes went wide. The big party? The one at the country club? Everyone is going to be there. Exactly, I said. All the aunts, all the cousins. The friends. The neighbors. It is a public forum, Becca said. And Denise will be there. Performing. I said, she will be playing the role of the doting niece, the perfect mother with the tragic, wayward daughter. You want to do it there? Becca asked. Lil, that is nuclear. Silence is how she wins. Becca, I said, repeating the thought that had been looping in my mind. She wins in the quiet conversations. She wins in the whispers. She wins because everyone is too polite to make a scene. I am done being polite. I am going to that party. I said, and I am going to bring the binder. Becca looked at me. She saw the exhaustion in my face, but she also saw the steel. Okay, she said, I will drive. I went home and looked at the red binder. It was full. I had the tax returns showing the subsidy. I had the docket number showing the guardianship. I had the note about the delayed adoption. I had the mortgage statement with my name on it. I had the testimony of the caseworker. I had the testimony of the man whose nursery I never slept in. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to present the case. Denise thought I was confident before. She hadn't seen anything yet. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at my own eyes. The eyes that Mrs. Higgins said were like Denise's. I will use them. I thought, I will use everything she gave me. The charm, the ability to command a room, the sharpness. I will use the weapons she forged to cut the strings she tied. I picked up my phone and texted Sam. We are going to the anniversary party. Are you sure? He replied instantly. I am sure. Then I will get my suit. He wrote. I closed the binder. The evidence was ready. The jury would be assembled. It was time for the closing argument. The Westbridge Country Club was a fortress of beige stucco and manicured ivy, a place where the town's upper middle class went to pretend that nothing ever rusted, decayed, or ran out of money. It was the perfect setting for my great-uncle Stan and Aunt Mary's 50th wedding anniversary. The theme was Golden Love, which meant the banquet hall was drowning in gold balloons, gold napkins, and gold-flecked centerpieces that probably cost more than my first car. I stood in the entryway with Sam, clutching my clutch bag like a shield. Inside that bag, folded into a crisp square, was a summary of the facts I had gathered over the last month. I didn't bring the red binder. That was in the car. But I had memorized every date, every dollar amount, and every legal term. Are you sure you want to do this? Sam asked, leaning in close. He looked handsome in his charcoal suit, but his eyes were darting around the room, scanning for threats, I am sure. I said, my voice was steady. It surprised me how steady it was. I had spent weeks crying, shaking, and spiraling, but now, standing on the precipice, I felt a strange, cold calm. I was done reacting. Today, I was acting. We walked into the ballroom. The air was thick with the smell of prime rib and expensive perfume. A jazz trio was playing a soft, inoffensive version of The Way You Look Tonight. There were about 80 people there, the entire extended Bailey clan, plus neighbors, friends, and business associates. And there, in the center of it all, was Denise. She was wearing a gold sequined dress that caught the light of the chandeliers. She was holding a glass of champagne, her head thrown back in laughter as she entertained a circle of cousins. She looked radiant. She looked like a woman who had successfully crushed a rebellion and was now enjoying the spoils of peace. When she saw me, her smile didn't waver. It just froze around the edges. She excused herself and glided over to us, her heels clicking on the parquet floor. "Lillian!" she exclaimed, reaching out to grasp my forearms. Her grip was tight, a warning masquerading as an embrace. "I am so glad you came. I was telling Linda I was worried you might not feel up to it." I looked at her hands on my arms. I didn't pull away. I just let them rest there, heavy and proprietary. I wouldn't miss it. "Mom," I said, "it is a big day." She searched my face, looking for the cracks. She was looking for the breakdown she had been advertising to the family. She wanted to see red-rimmed eyes or messy hair. Instead, she saw a blowout and professional makeup. "You look good," she said, sounding slightly disappointed. "So do you." I said, That dress is very loud. She laughed. A sharp tinkling sound. Oh, stop. Go find your seat. You are at table 5 with the cousins. And please, Lillian, let's just have a nice time. No drama. Stan is 80. No drama, I repeated. She patted my cheek, a gesture that felt like a slap in slow motion, and walked away to greet the mayor. We sat at table 5. My cousin Mike was there, along with his wife and Aunt Linda's daughter. Sarah. They all smiled at me. But the smiles were tight. They had heard the stories. They were watching me like I was a ticking bomb. So, Lil, Mike said, tearing a roll apart with unnecessary violence. Heard you have been taking some time. Everything okay? I unfolded my napkin and placed it on my lap. I have been great. Mike, I said, just doing some research. Research? Sarah asked. For work? For life? I said. The conversation died. We ate our salads in a silence that was louder than the jazz band. I watched Denise work the room. She was a master. She touched shoulders, refilled glasses, and laughed at jokes she had heard 1,000 times. She was performing the role of the matriarch. She was the glue that held the family together. And I was the crack in the foundation. Halfway through the main course, the speeches began. Aunt Linda went first, weeping about the enduring power of love. Then Uncle Jerry told a story about Stan's old fishing boat. Then, the MC, a DJ with a shiny vest, took the microphone. All right, does anyone else have a few words for the happy couple? The floor is open. This was it. My heart gave one hard, painful thump against my sternum. Then it settled into a slow, rhythmic beat. I stood up. Sam put his hand on my knee under the table. A final check. Are you with me? I squeezed his hand and let go. I walked to the front of the room. The heels I was wearing made a decisive click-clack on the wood. Heads turned. I saw Aunt Linda stiffen. I saw Denise, who was standing near the bar, freeze mid-sip. Her eyes went wide. She started to move toward me, but she was too far away. I took the microphone from the stand. I turned to face the room. 80 faces, 80 witnesses. Hi, everyone, I said. My voice didn't shake. It was the voice I used in boardrooms. Clear, projected. For those who don't know me, I am Lillian, Denise's daughter. There was a polite ripple of applause. Denise had stopped moving. She was watching me, her face a mask of calculated terror. She couldn't rush the stage without making a scene, and she hated scenes she didn't direct. I am not here to talk about Stan and Mary's marriage, although it is beautiful. I continued, I am here because, at my own birthday party last month, my mother made a joke that left a lot of you confused. The room went deadly silent. The air conditioning hummed. She told you all that she adopted me for the tax benefits. I said, we all laughed. But the silence afterwards was heavy, and in that silence, I realized that some jokes aren't jokes. They are confessions. Lillian. Denise's voice cut through the air. She was marching toward the front now, her gold dress shimmering. Lillian, sit down. You are embarrassing yourself. You are not well. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on the audience. I looked at Aunt Linda. I looked at the cousin who had laughed. I have spent the last month with a lawyer and a forensic accountant. I said, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was just going to read the minutes of the meeting. And I want to clear the air. My mother did not adopt me in 1991. A gasp went through the room. She filed for financial guardianship. I stated. She petitioned the court to classify me as a hard-to-place placement based on exaggerated medical risks so that she could qualify for a state subsidy. She collected that subsidy for 2 years. Lillian, stop this, Denise shrieked. She was at the edge of the dance floor now. Uncle Jerry grabbed her arm, trying to hold her back. She delayed my adoption until 1993. I continued, my voice rising just enough to carry over her shouting. She waited until the subsidy ran out and the new adoption tax credit kicked in. She timed my legal status to maximize her revenue. That is a lie, Denise screamed. She was struggling against Jerry now. She is lying. She is having a breakdown. Look at her. I turned to look at her then. I looked her dead in the eye. I have the court docket. Denise, I said. I have the tax returns from 1992 showing the state assistance. I have the loan documents from December 1991, where you used my guardianship status to secure $15,000 from Arthur Miller. The name Arthur Miller landed like a grenade. Several older relatives turned to look at each other. They remembered the loan. They remembered the sudden influx of cash. And I have the notes from the caseworker. Mrs. Higgins. I said, "Who confirmed that you petitioned to block another family, the Kavanaughs, from adopting me because you wanted the better resources?" The room was fracturing. I could see it happen in real time. The polite veneer of the country club was cracking under the weight of the specific, verifiable details. People weren't looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at Denise with horror. Denise broke free from Jerry. She stomped up to the microphone stand. Her face twisted into a snarl I had never seen in public before. She grabbed the mic stand, trying to wrestle it away from me. "You ungrateful little brat!" she hissed, her voice amplified by the speakers, booming out to the horrified guests. "I gave you everything. I took you in when nobody else wanted you. I didn't fight her for the mic. I let her have it." I stepped back, creating space between her rage and my composure. I let her scream. I let everyone see the mask slip. "I saved you," she yelled into the microphone, her breath heaving. "I fed you. I clothed you. So what if I got some help? So what? You think you are so special? You were an investment, and a bad one at that." The silence that followed was absolute. She had said it. You were an investment. She realized her mistake instantly. She clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes darting around the room. She saw the faces of her friends, her neighbors, her family. She saw the disgust. I stepped forward again. I didn't need the mic. The room was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. I asked her the question I had prepared, the question that cut through all the noise. "If you loved me as a daughter, Denise, why did you introduce me as a tax advantage?" She stared at me. Her chest was heaving. She looked trapped. She looked small. I needed the money back then," she stammered. Her voice was small, stripped of its usual bravado. "We were drowning. Mark's hours were cut. We needed the money." She looked out at the crowd, pleading for understanding. "I did it for us," she cried. "I did it so we could have this life. I gave her a good life. Does that count for nothing? I gave her piano lessons. I gave her a car." She truly believed it. That was the tragedy. She believed that because she had provided for me, she owned me. She believed that the transaction was fair. I looked at her with a profound, aching pity. "It counts," I said softly, "but it doesn't make me your daughter. It makes me your employee." I reached into my clutch and pulled out a single envelope. It wasn't the red binder. It was a letter from my attorney. I placed it on the table next to the anniversary cake. "I have legally separated my finances from yours. Denise," I said, "I have frozen my credit. I have removed my name from the mortgage you took out behind my back." The color drained from her face completely. "The mortgage?" she whispered. "I know about the Westbridge Savings and Loan account." I said, "I know you used my Social Security number 5 years ago. It is over. You cannot use me to float your loans anymore." Her knees seemed to give way. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. You froze it?" she asked, her voice trembling with genuine terror. "But the refinance, the rate, if I pull out, the rate collapses." I said, "I know. You have 30 days to find a new cosigner or the bank calls the loan." I turned to the room. "I am sorry to ruin the party," I said, but I couldn't let the lie stand. "Happy anniversary, Uncle Stan." I walked off the stage. The walk back to the door felt like walking through water. I could feel the eyes on me. I saw Aunt Linda, her face buried in her hands. I saw Sam standing by the door, holding it open, his face a mixture of awe and protection. As I reached the exit, I heard Denise's voice one last time. It wasn't a scream, it was a wail. "After everything I did. You owe me. You owe me." I didn't turn around. I walked out of the ballroom, down the carpeted hall, and into the cool night air. Sam was right beside me. We walked to the car in silence. When we got in, I didn't start the engine immediately. I sat there, listening to the crickets, listening to the blood rushing in my ears. Sam reached over and took my hand. "You did it," he said. "I did," I whispered. He looked back at the clubhouse. Through the glass doors, we could see commotion. People were standing up. Denise was gesturing wildly. Uncle Jerry was arguing with her. "She is going to spin this," Sam said. "She is going to tell them you are crazy. She is going to lie." "I know," I said, "but she knows that I know, and she knows the bank knows." "That is enough." I started the car. I wasn't an orphan. I wasn't a daughter. I was something new. I was a woman who had bought herself back. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the lot, leaving the golden balloons and the golden lies behind me. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in 33 years, the destination was entirely up to me. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't an easy one to tell, but the truth rarely is. I know there are many of you out there who have felt like a guest in your own family, or who have discovered that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually protecting themselves. If this story resonated with you, please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I read every single one. And if you want to hear more stories about reclaiming power and exposing the truth, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. Share your thoughts in English below. I would love to hear how you would have handled Denise. Until next time, stay safe and trust your gut.